on, man? We're supposed to be working together. Appreciate that. So yeah, can't thank you enough, my brethren, for that. Um, so yeah, this topic about Rastafari and party politics. I want to take it from the angle of Rastafari and party politics. We go, we kind of like zoom into the Ghana situation, but we're trying to look at it from us as Rastafari perspective for the most part. Um, Maybe we can start with a question: are we Rastafari who happen to be Ghanaian, or are we Ghanaian who happen to be Rastafari? And it's we're both, but I'm trying to emphasize the fact here that we have to look at all this with the Rastafari lens, or with Rastafari lenses, you know. But of course, this whole thing, I want to keep it short and tight so that we can have a solid discussion after that. So this is how it all started, you know. Brendan started speaking seriously about a sort of neglect, you know, the idea that we had not been political for a while. And that's why people started getting into Ghana's party politics. But again, like I'm saying, let's start thinking of it in terms of the Rastafari in the world situation. You know, brethren, and I'm sure Sistren noticed that the economy was in bad shape, you know, as always, right? We never had a break. So people are like, we have to get into politics so we can end corruption. You know, people talk about environment being messed with. Basically, our patrimony, what we've inherited from our ancestors, is being messed with. You know, bad governance, you know, incompetence, you know, in terms of, you know, governance. You know, conditions are worsening. So we have to become political in that sense. So for some of us, it really threw it off for us because some of us always thought we're political, right? So as soon as we hear terms like non-political, it's hard for us to make sense of it, you know, because we think what Rastafari stands for, all the activism, right? If we're trying to defend laws, so fighting for ganja legalization, all that, black liberation, black unity, everything Rastafari stands for is political. So what do the brethren mean by we have been non-political, or it's time to get into politics? And I think they're reading where they come to find out brethren are talking about representational politics. You know, they want to get in there and deal directly with governance of the nation state. You know, and it's a serious move, and we have to take that. We have to think about what that means, and that's the purpose of this reasoning. But before we get into that aspect, I want us to just scan the history quickly and see how Rasta people have engaged with nation states politics, because this is not really new. And of course, first stop will be Jamaica. You know, like 63 years ago, there's a Rasta man called Ras Sam Brown. We call him a serious intellectual up in Jamaica. You know, for the most part, self-taught. You know, he didn't spend too much time in academic institutions. So this is 1961. We're speaking. You know, he run for political office. West Kingston, he wanted a seat in Parliament, you know, as an independent candidate. The name of his party was the Black Man's Party. So I did hear some noise for the back there. If we cut that, please.
Yeah, Ken, please. Yes, you can go on.
Okay. So so his party was the Black Man's Party. It doesn't mean that he won the seat, but the move was a move he was making to engage with nation state politics. Very interesting. This was a very interesting period because the Jamaican government was trying to kind of like neutralize the bite of Rastafari. They realized Rastafari was a force. You know, we already know that Rastafari is not the majority of Jamaica, but Rastafari has always been a force. And some of us will argue it's because of Haile Selassie, because he's the power of true unity. So even if there's only one Rastafari, it's everything. You know, so as the Rastafari movement developing, the Jamaican government take note. First, they try to crush it, they couldn't. So they try to see how they go absorb it into their arrangement. So maybe some of us have heard of the Rastafari, the report on Rastafari released in 1960, where basically the government a little trick on us. Rastafari. They said they were introducing Rastafari to the people, and then there were other schemes that went with it. So they're like national intelligence people, right? I think Ghana will call it the CID or something along those lines, or not national intelligence. I'm not sure if CID is what applies. They had a program to find a way to divide Rasta people. So they started coming up with this narrative around this report where they started talking about their religious Rasta people and their political Rasta people. And they made the political Rasta people look like they were not, like they were a problem. And unfortunately, some of us Rasta people started using that language, like, oh yeah, I'm non-political. But the idea came from that campaign to divide us. So Rasta has always been political, but suddenly some of us say, oh yeah, I'm a religious Rasta. I don't care for politics. But Sam Brown had made a move right into the mix. He was in the lion's den, so to speak. Now let's fast forward to the 1970s and 80s, where we see reggae musicians working with the PNP in Jamaica, as a People's Party. Socialist leanings, which means that they were prioritizing the needs of the people, at least in theory, compared to people who prioritize a political party who prioritize the needs of business. Let's make money first. So because of the socialist leaning, there was a lot of reggae musicians, the Rastafari people, who were willing to see what they could do with that organization. Maybe similar to what some Rasta people are trying to do with the NDC right now. What are some of the things that happened? The government at that time, well, the party which was led by Michael Manley, tried to reach out to Bob Marley because he was one of the better known Rastas, and they asked them to put on a show. Actually they wanted it on your turf, and Bob was like, nah man, we're gonna do this thing, we're gonna have to bring it out to a turf for the whole nation, national stadium if possible. So Bob put down his terms right there, and they decided on a Smile Jamaica concert for 1976. What happened was 2 days before the concert, people from the other party came through, and agents of the other party came through and tried to assassinate Bob. We all heard about Bob Marley getting shot, right? So he survived, and he went ahead and performed, did the Smile Jamaica thing, but he had to leave town for 2 years. He came back and did the One Love 1978 another concert for the purposes. Now we can discuss the economics and the politics of that if necessary, but I think that's not the focus of this thing. So he comes back and he does that. Now people look at it from a distance and say, well, but Marley was, or Rasta people were part of the party politics in Jamaica. But the truth is, I've read things where they say Peter Tosh was the support of the PNP. We all know that Peter Tosh never going to support any party, right? You see what he can do with the party, right? Because if the party call him to come and perform, they'll say yeah, right? And then they say, oh yeah, you're part of this party. The same thing was said about Bob. Bob put it out real clear. He said he's neither for the government or the opposition. And it sounds very much like how Rastafari stand, as a body. But then fast forward to the 90s, late 90s in New Zealand, there's a brother. I'm sorry, I'm going to pronounce some names, maybe I'm not going to pronounce it right, but, for the purpose of reasoning. The brethren be Nandor Tangsas, for New Zealand, Rastaman, He run for parliament, got a seat on parliament, and he was pushing for ganja legalization and prison reform too, in terms of he had a concept, he was pushing a concept called a clean slate, where if you went to prison, we have this general thing, when you go to prison and you come out of prison, they will say, because of your record, yeah, this and that, right? Your chances are limited. And he was fighting for a clean slate for people who went to jail on certain charges, for, I don't want to say certain crimes, because a lot of times what they charge you with may not be what you've done, But yeah, so he was pushing for that. So I'm just we're trying to get a sense of the things Rasta people have done within the orbit of party politics. And he was fighting against GM foods too, genetically modified foods. So we're realizing that Rasta has a scope. Actually, he was working with the Green Party, but initially he was working with another party, but actually he started working with the Green Party. We're getting a sense of the scope of the thing, what Rastafari represents. The Green Party, of course, was the ruling party. Then in 2011, from between 2011 and 2019 in Jamaica, a Dreadlocks brother, I can't say for sure, but people say he's Rasta affiliated, so we'll consider that. His name be Damian Crawford. Maybe some of us know him. He became a senator in Jamaica, and he was one of the people who supported the bill to not force Rasta people, Rasta students, to cover their locks. He had an interesting run in there too. He actually became a shadow minister for education, and it's been said it was Minister of Tourism. I don't know too much about that, but that's an indicator right there. The possibilities was that Rasta was in the mix and doing things, if that's what we're going to take from that. But definitely in Africa, Burkina Faso, Ras Karim Samia, some people call him Sims K. Leja, he's a reggae musician. I want to just call him a musician. Radio host, doing some serious stuff. He's Rastafari, Hail Haile Selassie. Some call him a Sankarist too, and I think any Rastafari will appreciate Sankara, right? So it's obvious that he had more than just being oppositional, but people associate him mainly with the 2014 rebellion or ouster of your man, what's his name, Blaise Compaoré, the man who was responsible for the overthrow of, or at least who took over after Sankara. So this, our brother Sims K. Leja, was one of the main forces, not campaign, that was able to kick him out of power. And that guy had been in power for a while, and he was not an easy guy to deal with. And then we go another step and we look at Uganda. We all know about Bobby Wine. He's associated with opposition. He's a reggae musician, but he plays his own kind of sounds too. He ran for parliament, and then later he became the National Unity Platform presidential candidate. He ran for president in 2019. Much of what we hear from him is trying to get rid of Museveni, because he's been around for a long while. So people categorize him more as an oppositional figure. But of course, I'm sure there's other things he stands for. So let's leave some room for that. And Kenya, we've heard of George Wajakoya with his Roots Party of Kenya. Initially tried to run in 2012. He announced he was going to run and he withdrew. And in 2022, he ran for president. His platform was basically about economics, So now we talk about those who are known for opposition, but we're talking about another. We're just going to look at two examples of Rastas and party politics who are looking primarily at economics here. At least that's what they're associated with. So he had very interesting ideas like legalizing the ganja, of course. He's trying to solve the poverty problem. He's trying to solve the national debt problem. And then he had other angles, like, they're going to export dog meat, because he says it costs more than the regular meat, so Kenya will make some more money and will help them get out of poverty. And then he also had an idea for farming, harvesting snake venom. He said that too could be exported. So he's coming up with his own ideas about how to deal with the economic situation. Then in Gambia, 2021, there was a brother called Bankole Yao Jojo Ahaji. Now I'm pronouncing it like I'm from Ghana, or Ahaji. But I don't know how to pronounce it in Gambia, so please forgive me. People know him as Banky. He ran for president as an independent candidate, and he was also focused on finances, economics, and he was pushing the ganja thing, like we could make a lot of money off of this. In an interview, it was very interesting. The interview was, this is 21st century, right, 2021. Interviewer is asking him, hey, what about your hair? Are you going to cut your hair if you become president? Right? This is 21st century. It tells you a lot about where we're at right now, I've heard people have been talking about how can you have locks and run for president, So in that same interview, he said something along the lines of basically, why are you doing this? And he says, well, we can sit aside, rest of people can sit aside and just sing songs about oppression, right? Sing songs about corruption, about a bad situation. And then you could also choose to run for office and change it. So basically, it's along the lines of what's motivating this new trajectory, this new direction that Rastafari people are going in terms of party politics. Like we can sit aside and not really engage, and then this is engagement right here. So speaking of that, let's go to Ghana now. Ras Mubarak, MP of Kumbungu, if I'm saying it right. Yeah.
Exactly.
He, from 2017 to 2021, seriously doing this thing there as a Ras, right? We had the pleasure of vibing with him on Radio Culture. Jah Beloved, give thanks for that. And yeah, it's very interesting. One thing that struck me was his interest in youth, and I think that's a crucial thing when we're thinking of nation-state politics, or even just the idea of a nation-state or politics in general. Most of the older people get used to what we're used to, and we don't think fresh thoughts. Unfortunately, when we bring youngsters on board too, we try to teach them the old ways and try to make them experts in the old ways. But we have to create some room for them to come up with their own imaginative ideas, the creative ideas. But appreciate his emphasis on youth. He's doing some serious work with youth in an official capacity too. And then we know he fought for the ganja legalization thing. He complained that he wasn't getting enough support from the Rastafari body in Ghana. He said, for instance, he was saying that at least Rasta people could have been there to be observers, while the, what do they call it, deliberations were going on. He also says, he said something very interesting. He said, if only we had more Rastas in parliament, we probably could have achieved more. He was alone in the den of, whatever we want to call him. And there was very little he could do. And let's also remember that Rasta people started pushing for the legalization of ganja for us to be able to blaze it and use it freely. And it turned out to be basically it was co-opted. It became something that had to do with industrial hemp and all these other things where other interests took over. And going by what he's saying, or our own lessons we've learned from it, we could have controlled the narrative and done things that would, of course, it's not over, right? We can learn from that and see what we do next. And kept it on the issue of let's legalize the ganja so we can smoke it. We can burn the ganja because Rasta, and then we can think of those other things, industrial and other things too. But primarily, what's motivating us is the legalization of marijuana. Okay, so for us to blaze. So quickly, Black Rasta, he's another brethren who we can say is political, very political, and he engages the party politics thing, the conversation. He's always getting in the mix as far as I know, and he's always heightening the awareness of people in terms of political history of African Black people. And so we think of him seriously, alongside my brethren Jah Beloved, who's doing some very serious work too. He never unflinching. That's how I want to describe him. So these brothers, two brothers, are doing some profound work in that area, engaging with the politicians, getting their point across. In a sense, they're performing the traditional role of journalism. The fourth estate of government, something like that. Holding politicians accountable. And speaking truth to power. Then we can talk about the NDC Rastafari caucus, or is it NDC Rasta caucus, which is basically as far as I know, I'm glad to learn from those who are actually involved in it. And if I say anything that's not right, hey, please correct me. But as far as I know, it's an interest group, or it's supposed to be an interest group, a pressure group that comes in to fight for. This morning I saw some reasoning on the thread, from Ras Mauli, and I noticed some of the things he mentioned. If they're fighting for their constituency in the first place, fighting for job opportunities, farming opportunities, to be able to call shots or influence decisions in the area of creative arts. They want to elevate the arts center They want to push tourism and culture, access to jobs for Rastafari. I noticed that also some of the initial things that the the caucus was pushing. You know, the fact that Rastas were being left out of the job market, right? So they were trying to get that right, and the idea was to get involved with a part. As Rasmal was saying, is the rights of brothers and sisters and children in the faith are what you're trying to defend. You know, that's why they're in there. And there was an interesting exchange in there. There was another brethren, Russ Michael, who actually said, "Hey, we got to be careful. We don't get mixed up in, you know." And Russ Mali was like, "Yeah, you know, we already know that it will never happen. You know, this is just some people who are choosing to join to work with the NDC. I know, maybe join the NDC, whatever." But it's an interesting dynamic that we can talk about after this, you know. But all of this is basically in the space of democracy, right? We're trying to think about democracy. I'll just make two quick points, and then we talk about. We just make a conclusion so we can start. We can start the discussion. So we talk about one thing that always comes up is Kwame Nkrumah was political, so why are we not political? You know, Haile Selassie was political, so why are we not political? You know, for the people who said pushing the idea of engaging with nation-state party politics. But as a distinction, though, you know, these guys, both of these people we're talking about, did not engage with party politics as we know it now, like multi-party politics. Nope. You know, Kwame Nkrumah started as part of the UGCC, right? Set up the CPP, right? And next thing we know, looking at the situation, you're bringing up ideas and people just shoot it down because they just don't agree with you, not because of what you're talking about. And all the problems, you know, the attacks on his life, even before 1957, you know, like in 1955, sitting on his veranda, a bomb goes off. You know, they try to kill him already. And right after that, another one goes off that same day. Can you imagine going through that? And there were two more attempts on his life. And there were a lot of bombings in town, right? There were assassination attempts. There were a lot of, you know, things where did it happen where he couldn't tolerate the multi-party thing. He didn't have that kind of disposition at all. You know, there's a man where a time the prime minister, they asked him, say, "Hey, don't you think we need a deputy prime minister?" And I say, "Well, you think I'm too old? You think I'm so old that I need a deputy?" Right? So this is someone who's very precious about what he's doing. He doesn't want to mix it up and dilute it and have to go through too many things in the name of democracy, right? Does Western democracy have the luxury of going through that? But in his view, no, I want to handle everything direct. You know, he needed time too. So this limited terms of office and all that was a secondary thought to him. You know, it's going to be problematic, you know. There was no freedom of press. Matter of fact, people started having some newspapers in the country. He started pushing the idea that can we absorb them? You know, once you didn't have the message that he thought was relevant to the project that he was working on, he wanted to, you know, engage them and absorb them into the project he was working on. And when that was not possible, the idea was to shut them down, you know. So I'm just saying all this to say that democracy means something else to someone like Kwame Nkrumah. And he wasn't tolerating the multi-party thing at all. He was like, multi-party politics just divides the people. You know, some of us would say parts the people, you know. There were the problems of campaign promises and all that. He wasn't going to stand for that at all. And then let's talk about His Imperial Majesty Rastafari, because it's because of him that we're Rasta, right? I can't say I'm Rasta, but I'll check out His Majesty later. This is what I want to do. It's because of Selassie that we got a clout where we got. It's because of Selassie we get a respect where we got. Selassie where we get all the power where we got, right? If Rasta is attractive to the world, it's because of Selassie, right? If Rasta is meaningful, if we take us seriously, it's because of Selassie. So we got to anchor it on King Selassie. In the reasoning with an Italian journalist called Lorena Falasci, the lady come up with ideas about democracy. There's no democracy. He's actually saying there's no democracy in Ethiopia, and he's trying to contrast democracy and republics with monarchy, having a king. Using all these words, it's less to say, well, you know, he doesn't see any difference between all these words. So basically, he's rejecting their categories, which we must be doing too, you know, in just about every area, actually. But that's another topic. So he says he doesn't see anything new, any improvements that this democracy has brought in the world, including the West. That's what it's implying. But he just said he doesn't see anything. He called it illusions. He had done a lot of things to democratize Ethiopia, right? He wrote a constitution and said he wants to share power with the people, right? There was this noble people who were mainly the decision makers. Let's see, started introducing more non-noble people, and at the end of the day, he had more non-noble people deciding on national affairs in that parliament. So I don't want to go down the list of what's left to do in terms of governing by the people or governing with the people. But basically he's telling us to rethink these ideas that we just accept that this is how government has to be, this is how democracy's got to be, and this is all we got. Someone shut.
Senior Michael,
can you shut it up?
Please help me with your muting. I tried muting, but it's not working. Okay, Ken, you can go ahead now. It's muted.
Good. Thank you, Rasejo. So by the end of the day, serious problems. As we know, economics in Kwame Nkrumah's Ghana, Haile Selassie's Ethiopia, was not sweet. At the end of the day, that's something we got to admit, and that's something I like to talk about in a quick second. Economics as is designed to keep us in check, no matter how independent or how free we are. It's designed by other forces. So let's just dash into that real quick. So Kwame Nkrumah, when he was fighting for Ghana's independence, he said things like, let's seek the political kingdom first, and he fought hard and got that. And then he says, then after that we're going to create an economic paradise. And he did everything he could to realize that economic paradise. But market forces wouldn't allow that, to put it mildly. Political forces in the world. They have the policy in the West. Someone like Nixon put in a very concise way. He said, let the economy scream as soon as they don't disagree with us, right? And Nkrumah was not agreeing with them. So definitely they'll do whatever they can to sabotage the economy, right? That's not a conversation we can have, but I want to just go through this real fast. I was going to make it short. Kutu Achampong, J.J. Rawlings, firing squad, high, and all those things. The purpose was to end corruption and better the economy. At the end of the day, people were saying Jerry was also corrupt, or at least his regime was corrupt, right? It's what. I'm sorry, folks. I'm sorry. Sorry about the noise. So Kutu Achampong were actually executed because of corruption in your project. But when you started out, the idea was to make the economy better. Everyone, Kufuor, Mills, Mahama, Akufo-Addo, each one talks about making the economy better. Are we saying that we are so inept, or maybe are we overlooking the idea that economics, that what happens with economics is not really in our hands? And I'd love very much for us to get into that. That's not to say we got to spare the corrupt politicians. We got to kick their butts. We got to fight them. We got to rough them up. We got to anything if we discredit them, all those things, burn them, whatever. You know what I mean? They need to be punished. They got to go to jail, whatever. Let's get that done. But let's also face the fact that after all that, it's not going to fix our economy, really. If we really love our people, right, we have to start thinking of other ways of thinking about economics. And there are people who already talk, like with Reasonable Profit Amatep the other day, and he was already coming up with ideas that people are working with. So we'll talk about that, moving away from an economy that has to be so dependent on money as we know it, because that is hooked to the Western gains, whether we like it or not. I can make as much money as I want, but it's not going to change our people's situation. We as a collective can make as much money as we want. It's not going to change Africa's situation. Let's just face it and start to think about other ways. As the Britain was saying, let's be more creative and imaginative. Actually, as Selassie to say, the creative, right? So Africa awaits its creatives. It means we have to think about other ways of doing things. So quickly, let's go into, so this idea of economics, we've been looking at it, and sometimes people are like, hey, capitalism is the way. Let's just do some capitalism because that seems to be working, right? Compared to socialism. Some people will be like, let's get into socialism. And then we take external meanings, but we're overlooking the fact that really, if we say we're going to do socialism, we're assuming that we're part of the human community, that we can be taken seriously, we can be listened to. Well, history has proven that the African voice is not really listened to. Let's just accept that too. Or else we're going another 20, 30 years before we learn that lesson. we're in a different kind of space, so maybe we have to think about this things quite differently. Right now, it looks like good governance is because we did everything stuck on money. It looks like good governance just got to do with learning how to. This is one Braden was talking about the situation in Jamaica, and I think it applies to all of us. Learning how to manage the IMF money where they give us. That's what it means, because they own the money, right? In Nkrumah's time, it was straight up England that owned the money. So we're collecting money for the thing we call Gold Coast money, Ghana money. It was their money, right? We can talk about that, We look at the gold in the land and we say we're rich. True, the land is rich, but who gives value? Who decides value? Really, it's not us. We talk about the gold, the cocoa, the oil. Has to change our situation. Nigeria has us. Is it just corrupt politicians? No, we got to think a little farther than that. That's a problem. I'm not saying that it's not caused by like corrupt politicians, but there's something else going on that I would argue that we are not addressing. And we got so much genius amongst us where we have to start thinking, man, how can we say the hell with this thing and come up with something? We're always trying to say, hey, they have 1,000 oranges, they give us 100, we're fighting over it, and Kojo Mensah is taking 4 of the oranges instead of taking just one. And I'm upset with Kojo Mensah, and if I beat him and punish him, I feel I've done something. And at the end of the day, we still got they give us very little options. So back to the thing, let's not forget that if you have gold in your land, that does not necessarily make you wealthy, because they decide the value of that gold, and they can play all sorts of games. I don't want us to talk to them. Look at the Congo. Congo is the richest spot we can think of for the most part. But look at how life has been. We can't just fault it on bad governance, but that's another story. So basically, the conclusion that I want to come to, I'm tapping up ideas like what I read this morning and the post they exchanged between Michael and Ras Mowley. Rastafari is, in a sense, like non-aligned, essentially. We should be able. Otherwise, we're supporting soccer teams, right? I'm a Kotoko supporter, so no matter what, that's Kotoko, right? But this is more serious than that, right? We should know that either party or both parties can do good. So what do? When the party we're against does something good, we should work with that. That's something not too long ago, and enough respect to that man right there. He was in a reasoning, and he was saying that some people complain that why is he working with some particular regime in Ghana, and he was, humble voice, a deep thinker. He was like, he's willing to work with any government, to improve the lives of his people, and I think that's where Rastafari stand. Actually, my first reasoning with in the meeting with the brethren too, I heard one brethren, I think, Coach Ras Jabi, he said a similar thing. I remember that very well. He said, we have to work with any regime in Ghana. That's what I got from him. I'm not quoting him word for word, but basically made up. And I know a lot of us think about that, right? Instead of saying this is my party and I'm going to support them and I don't know what's going on there, because I know that I've heard that, and I'm sure I know this is true. There's Rasta people on both sides of this of this competition between the red, black, and green, and the red, white, and blue parties, right? We should know immediately that it's a kind of game. But what happens when the other side does it? That's my question. That's something that you're looking for. It is our support, Doesn't mean you're supporting the party, you're supporting the project. Okay, but one thing, my brethren, Raswiro, Dr. Kojo Ponwadia said the other day when we started reasoning, which stuck with me, was a movement. Do we have a robust movement? Or better, let me put it this way: we have to have a robust movement. What is the nature of a robust movement? That can be a resource for, let's say, the NDC Rasta caucus, right? So they're not over there trying to do something, and it's like it's not well grounded in a collective kind of agenda. You know what I mean? And that's very likely to happen. So we need a movement. And now, actually, still coming from Professor Ponwadia, he came up with some interesting idea. I think in another conversation, it was like, there's a need to build alliances where all the four in the country that have analogous or similar agenda agendas as Rasta. They don't have to be Rasta, but if they're defending something, we're defending. If they're trying to promote something, we're promoting. It's important to build solid alliances with them, not to become them, right? But when it comes to the whole thing, Selassie always says, let's see what we can do together. I cannot be you, you cannot be me. But the unity is about what can we do together. So building that's what all comes in. Like Selassie, the power of the true unity. Yeah. The power comes from the people, the collective, and the ability to coalesce, to work with other people, and push it. So I'm gonna cut it there. I know I went way beyond the point, the limit I gave myself. So I want to cut it there and see if we have enough to work with, to hear what the brethren have to say, the sisters have to say. Let's build on this. Enough respect. Now can we reason on these things, discuss these things? You can come in from any angle. If there's anything I said that you want to critique,